Why good advice often fails? Answering the questions before solving the problem. In our previous discussions, we explored a practical method of solving personal problems. We saw that every problem has causes, and unless those causes are identified and addressed, lasting solutions cannot be achieved. Today, I would like to discuss another important aspect of the process. Even if we discover the correct solution, another challenge immediately appears. Will the person actually follow it? This is especially important when we are trying to help children and young people. Many of the actions required to solve a problem must naturally be taken by others. Parents have responsibilities. Teachers have responsibilities. Friends and peer groups influence the outcome. Educational institutions also play a role. However, the child or young person must also actively participate in solving the problem. No one else can completely solve it for them. That means our task is not simply to prescribe solutions. We must first convince the person that those actions are worthwhile. This may sound easy, but in reality, it is one of the most difficult parts of the entire process. A child may openly ask questions. Why should I do this? How will it help me? Why should I believe you? Other concerns may never be spoken aloud. The child may not even clearly understand his or her own doubts. Yet those hidden questions can become powerful barriers to progress. Modern education has trained young people to question everything. Scientific thinking does not encourage people to accept ideas simply because parents, teachers, or respected elders have said so. Whether we like it or not, this is now the world we live in. Therefore, if we expect young people to change their behavior, our answers must be logical, practical, and supported by evidence. Simply saying, this is what our ancestors taught, is no longer enough. The modern world has also changed our values. Globalization, advertising, and consumer culture constantly send one powerful message. Money can buy happiness. Money can solve every problem. Young people hear this message every day from social media, advertisements, and popular culture. Under these circumstances, merely quoting the words of great religious teachers, philosophers, or historical leaders is often insufficient. The younger generation expects explanations. They want reasons. They want evidence. Many parents and grandparents grew up in a completely different cultural environment. Their beliefs were rarely questioned. Today, they often find themselves struggling when their children challenge those very foundations. This does not mean that ancient wisdom has become irrelevant. Far from it. But it does mean that we need a different way of presenting that wisdom. Interestingly, not every ancient teacher expected blind acceptance. Some encouraged questioning and personal investigation. They invited people to examine ideas carefully before accepting them. However, there is another important point. Questioning does not mean endlessly delaying action. Before carrying out any scientific experiment, scientists first become reasonably convinced that the hypothesis is worth testing. Otherwise, they would waste time, money, and resources. Similarly, before beginning any program of personal development, a person should first become convinced that the proposed approach deserves a genuine trial. That initial confidence is essential. Another important issue is that the modern world is very different from the world that existed thousands of years ago. Human nature has not changed very much, but lifestyles, occupations, technology, and social relationships have changed enormously. Therefore, timeless principles often need to be explained using modern language and modern examples. Throughout history, successful teachers understood this very well. They did not repeat the same speech to every audience. Instead, they adjusted their explanations according to the background of the people listening. For one group, the discussion centered on excessive self-denial because that was their concern. For another group, different examples were selected because they related better to their beliefs and daily experiences. The principle remained the same, only the method of presentation changed. The same approach is necessary today. The examples we choose, the words we use, and the explanations we provide should match the age, education, culture, and life experience of each individual. One message cannot effectively reach everyone. The purpose of this series is not to provide rigid formulas. Instead, it aims to provide broad practical guidelines that can be adapted to different people and different situations. Ancient teachings also contain valuable guidance on managing relationships and social responsibilities. Many discussions describe how we should deal with parents, teachers, spouses, children, friends, employees, and many other social connections. These principles remain remarkably useful even today. However, we should avoid applying every numerical recommendation literally. Some advice was originally given to wealthy individuals living under very different economic conditions. For example, recommendations on saving, spending, or investing income cannot simply be copied by someone living with very limited financial resources. The underlying principles remain valuable. The exact application should be adjusted according to each person's circumstances. Finally, we come to perhaps the most challenging question of all. What about the mind? Most modern scientific investigations focus on things that can be directly observed and measured. The mind is much more difficult to study using conventional scientific instruments. Yet almost every major philosophical and spiritual tradition agrees on one point. Our thoughts, emotions, and attitudes play a decisive role in creating both our problems and their solutions. Young people are often caught between these two different approaches. On one side, they hear scientific explanations. On the other side, they hear teachings about the importance of the mind. Unless we explain these ideas carefully and logically, confusion is almost inevitable. That is why our next discussions will focus on the mind itself. We shall explore what meditation really is, how it can contribute to mental development, the benefits that can reasonably be expected, and the precautions that should be taken before beginning any serious practice. Because if the mind plays a central role in creating our problems, then understanding and developing the mind must also become a central part of solving them. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to seeing you in the next discussion.